All right, welcome to the 36th WharfKit call. Um, Yesterday was a pretty big release day. We published out Wharf 1.0 for a ton of packages. The blog post is up on the site. Kind of outlines all of the releases that came, well, most of the releases. There's a bunch of others that we didn't include, like plugins and whatnot. Um, but there's links on all of them that link to a whole bunch of new places on the website, as well as a bunch of GitHub accounts. I guess just as we've been talking about week to week, the documentation is all now live. You can see all of the sections here now. There are some that aren't even listed that are linked from other sections as well. Um, we are continuing to work on some guides. Those will be the next big update that is coming out. There'll be some new written guides. There'll be some video guides, kind of a walkthrough interactive type tutorial type thing. Um, yeah, lots of website stuff. We now have a contract kit page up, kind of outlines exactly why you should be using it. I'm not sure if we'll add more sections to it, but really just trying to sell that this is a good way to use it, as well as the account kit page. So it talks a little bit about account kit, the new token contract thing, and the resource SDKs we have as well. So lots of updates there, just surrounding this big 1.0 release. We are collecting feedback right now. Been a handful of developers that have jumped on it within the past 24 hours and starting to use it, already identified some issues and done some minor updates to help refine that a little bit more. Yeah, so that's kind of the big news. It's been a long road to get here. I know we talked about that a lot on a lot of these calls, and we've probably been talking about releasing documentation on 1.0s for at least a month now. So it's awesome to finally have it out. Like I mentioned, we have just a few outstanding items remaining for the project overall. One of them being the Atomic Assets SDK, which is undergoing internal reviews right now. Hopefully we'll have a 1.0 release of that in the not too distant future. And I think I mentioned this on previous calls as well, but we'll be looking for feedback on that. Atomic Assets isn't something we use extensively internally. Obviously, like we support transactions with it, but it's not in Unicode, it's not an Anchor. The actual NFT side of Atomic Assets is just not something we're deeply engaged with. So from the community, from those who are actively engaged with it, we will be seeking feedback on that one. And then aside from that, we have the starter kits that are still coming. We are actively working on those right now, trying to figure out what the best way to offer those is. And then the video interactive tutorial that we were talking about just a moment ago. Those are really the three big outstanding things. And then the entirety of what was proposed in this is going to be completed. So yeah, a long road, but I'm not sure the status of these calls, what we'll be doing with these. We were just talking about that on one of our team calls earlier this morning. We might wrap these weekly calls up in the near future, at least temporarily until they're revived in some other format. Or if they just get rolled into one of the other developers' calls, or we turn this into some other initiative where it's not as much status updates. It would be more just kind of like the round table where we're like, okay, let's talk. What are the problems you're facing and how can we solve this with SDKs? So we'll see where that goes. But like right now, my gut says we'll do maybe another week or two of this to wrap out the entire project. And then maybe in December, we don't do any of these weekly calls. And then in the new year, we can revisit if there's a new series, if we're just rolling them into other calls, what happens next. So that's going to be our December as a team, as a Gray Mass team, is looking at what's next. And December that'll be our focus. So might be more Wharf, might be more of our other projects. We're not sure. And we'll figure out how maintaining Wharf moving into the future, what that looks like. So yeah, I don't know that I have any other really big topics today, but I'm happy to kind of dive into anything we have, or just kind of make this a quick one, really. There's not much active development going on in any of the kits just because we just pushed the 1.0 versions out. All of that is kind of maintenance mode at this point, where we're fixing bugs and making sure that these are usable for people that are building applications. We do have a couple months of maintenance built into the contracts, so we're going to continue to fix bugs. But in terms of new features, unless we feel really passionate about it and want to do it pro bono, then I don't know that there's a whole lot more coming.
Well, all right then.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's like that's a wrap.
Mic drop.
Yeah, right. No, it's super cool. I'm really excited to actually get out and start like building something with this. I had mentioned in the past how we had an experimental branch of Unicove that used Wharf. That was many months ago and it's since broken compatibility because it was such an early version. I might be picking that up and having some fun with it.
And you guys are still rewriting desktop with WharfKit, yeah?
Yeah. And it's only using like the session kit directly, and we think we might use the contract kit in some ways. But yeah, that's all like I don't know. Wait, do I actually have it? It's a very rudimentary application at this point. But it does use the use Wharf yarn dev. Let's see. Nope. All right. I was hoping I could run it, but anyways. Yeah, we got a couple projects that are using it. And then the new tutorial and the new to-do app will show something in action along those regards. I think we had some other game that was very minor. I'm trying to even remember what it was. Might have been a multiplayer bingo or something that we wrote a long time ago as a tutorial. Maybe we'll have to update that. I don't know. It's been so long since we've played that, and we talked about it briefly as that being maybe what we did with the tutorial, but bingo by yourself just isn't really a great example. Oh, there's the cat.
Yeah, I think we struggled with this showing what the good parts of Antelope are, and I think one of the best parts is actually the ability to dig into use cases or genres that other chains couldn't necessarily do. And single player, you could do single player anywhere, right? But I think that like some of the early ones that were attempted on EOS when it just launched, like the Space Invaders and things that were like really, really fast paced, really showcase what can be done.
Yeah, that asynchronous multiplayer, I think, is a pretty strong showing.
Should just recreate StarCraft.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Be massively
do it in a weekend. Come on.
Yeah. Each game, you launch your own blockchain.
Absolutely. It's ChatGPT and Midjourney.
Exactly. Have everything be dynamic or generative.
Olivia agrees.
Yeah, she likes that idea. Cool. Is there, I guess in your guys' opinion, is there anything that's missing? We're going to be doing this kind of overall review with some other ENF resources here in the not too distant future. Make sure that from like a contractual point of view that everything's completed. But I mean, based on what you guys have seen or worked with or anything, like I know there's some existential missing pieces of the ecosystem, but in terms of Wharf itself, I don't know. I guess we're kind of looking for maybe what's next. It's a hard question to answer. I know we're trying to answer it ourselves and don't have great answers yet.
Next for Wharf specifically?
Yeah.
I think, um, specifically with SDKs like this, it's so hard to know what's next without other people kind of chiming in, telling you what's next. It is a product built for others, mostly. You might be a consumer of it, but only by consuming it will you know what's next.
Exactly. And that's why we're not entirely sure what's next, is because we haven't fully consumed it. Like we have inklings of it in the next
Right.
version of Anchor Desktop and Unicode, we were just talking about, but we'll come up with ideas as we do that, but we haven't started on that. We just finished the race, like the marathon race, and we're catching our breath. It's like we don't even know where the next race is.
There's a comment here. Include null. I still want to see proof on login, at least for Anchor.
True, true, true. I believe the session kit 1.1 did include an optional identity proof from a login response, but I don't think we modified the Anchor plugin to do that yet. So yeah, that is definitely. I think there's an open issue for that. We should definitely tackle that. I agree.
What exactly does this mean? I'm not sure I follow. What is proof on login?
Um, with With a lot of wallets, when you log in, it just says, hey, this is the account name. With Anchor, when you log in, we are actually signing a transaction, like a mock transaction, and then returning a signature. And that was not being surfaced through the session kit um, until this 1.1 version. So none of the plugins, including Anchor, could actually surface that stuff. Where I think it's in wallet, uh, metadata, login response. Yeah, right there. So in version 1 of the session kit, this didn't exist. And now in 1.1, we do have an optional identity proof that when a wallet performs a login, it can return the proof. And these proofs are like it's an object that contains a signature and a bunch of other metadata as well. Like I think that there's some arbitrary data that could be included. And it's a way for, during the login process, for somebody to prove that they actually are in control of an account by creating a signature with the key associated to that account. So
I see.
plugins, yeah, plugins can take advantage of it. The wallet plugin or the Anchor plugin has not taken advantage of it yet, but we do need to go in and modify it because I do believe if I just jump over to, my fingers always end up on the wrong keys when I'm looking at a different monitor. In the Anchor login process, oh, we moved all this to the, I think we moved it all to protocol ESR, which is now used by the Anchor plugin. It's like so many code bases and trying to remember exactly where they are. Yeah, this request right here does return an identity proof, just because that's the format that the ESR protocol uses. So I think what we need to do is return it, and then in the plugin itself, we'll be able to just return that, and there will be proof. Yeah, I don't think, and I just reading the comment from chat again, the Cloud Wallet added a proof on login. The Wax team, they have not been submitting PRs yet. Like we haven't gotten, I know that there's now temporary accounts and some other things. If they added a proof and it's not too hard for us to add, we could always add that as well. We'll have to go in and look at what they're actually returning and maybe try to fit that within the shape of an identity proof, and then we can return that as well. But it would be really nice if those two wallets, Anchor and the Cloud Wallet, could both return these proofs to the application as part of the login response. And then, you as an application developer could be like, hey, I now have proof that this is an actual account that logged in rather than being spoofed and saying, I'm the EOSIO account. Not that they'd be able to do anything on chain, but if you have some off chain logic that is based on chain validation, you don't want people to be able to spoof each other.
Why do you need on-chain validation?
Uh, it's it's more to validate on an off-chain application that you are an on-chain identity.
Aren't you already getting the pieces to do that though?
Not currently, no. I mean, you're just getting a response back from a wallet plugin, and the wallet plugin could lie to your application. There's no verification step.
Well, but wait, what you're saying right now is that Anchor gives back the signature of a fake transaction, but it also gives
Yep.
back the account name and the keys. So you could pair those two and figure out
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly the process that needs to be fleshed out
oh,
from
I
end
see.
to end. Yeah. So the Anchor plugin is not currently returning that signature, even though it's capable of it. And same with the Wax Cloud wallet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Include null makes a good point here, which I guess could be an optional, but login needs to accept a nonce too to be secure, which I'm guessing in the case of Anchor, it is using a nonce, which is in the form of what is it, the current blocker or timestamp or something passed in.
It is, but I think the nonce, from a lot of people's perspective, needs to be something that a backend provides, their
Yeah.
backend provides. And for that, on our side with ESR, we really need to go back and revisit the signing request protocol and release a new version that actually supports that better. Because right now, the identity proofs in here, identity proof, it is, we have a scope that you can kind of arbitrarily use. It has to be a name. So you could provide a nonce in there. But we should really just add an arbitrary bit of data. I was hoping there was more of a, I guess this is probably the best description of the shape of an identity request right now. We really just need some sort of data field that you could put whatever nonce you want in there.
I think that it is quite dangerous to just arbitrarily sign anything because you could simply be signing, a buffer for a transaction without ever seeing the transaction. But having some kind of shape that maybe isn't as verbose as like a fake transaction, because I know that historically there's been problems for backends or the comprehension of people to be able to validate those because they're not expecting that as a result, right? They're expecting to give some string and then validate the string was signed. That's the most common use case, I think. But it is particularly dangerous, and I would like to see a continuation of the ESR or some form of a shaped object being signed.
Yeah, agreed. It's something we've talked about a lot. And this is our kind of protection to make sure that it is not viable to be an actual transaction, is where every identity proof has an account that is just blank. So you're signing something that
Mhm.
is never associated to a contract. Um, and so that signature is never going to be valid on chain just because we are using this empty namespace. So,
Right, but this is getting so from what I recall, the problem with doing it this way is they actually in the back end have to go and because you're not providing this back to them. You're not providing um, the raw transaction, correct?
we are.
Oh,
In the identity proof, there's a serialized transaction that you can use.
I see. Okay, so you are doing a lot of that headache for them.
Yeah, yeah. The identity, my words got all tangled. The identity proof object that we're passing back, like this is what comes back is one of these structs. Um, it has a bunch of helper methods on it where like this is the transaction call, which you can call and it'll give you the transaction object itself. There's also a recover method. There's a verify method where you can pass in an authority as well as what time it is to make sure it's not expired. So there are quite a bit of helper methods built into the proof object that's returned that'll hopefully make it a lot easier to actually work with.
Can they pass this? Can you reinstantiate this in a backend? Because of course you can't object.
Yeah, since it's a struct, we can actually serialize the whole thing into
Nice.
just the hex data, and then the backend can take the hex data and reinitialize it as an identity proof using ABIs where ABIs are probably not normally meant to go. So yeah, we have
It's
these.
all abstracted away from them though, so that
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. So you can, I believe, just say identity proof from, yeah, if it's a string, you can just pass in the hex data string of what it is when you do identity proof from. It'll take it, run the from string, and it splits it apart and decodes it and runs it through the decoder just like it would any action. And it has the built-in ABI of identity proof. So you don't need to pass an ABI or anything special. You just give it the string and it'll decode it into one of these objects. So definitely need to add some more arbitrary to it though. But just like I was showing in the ABI file, these are our fake ABIs essentially. We're going to have to come up with a new variant, both an identity v4 that will then add, like you can see v2, all we had was a permission level. That was the data of the transaction you were signing. And v3, we added this scope, which the scope could be a nonce, but the scope is also meant to be the scope of your login. So if you hijacked that for a nonce, it wouldn't necessarily be, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that anymore. So really we just need to add a v4 of this, add a new field that is data of some kind. Maybe it's a string or I don't know, whatever type we want to figure out. And then we'll have to come up with a new request variant type that also includes identity v4. There's some other things we'll have to add, like there's a version number somewhere as the first couple bytes of one of these ESR payloads. That'll need to be updated. And then it should be, with that being released, it'll be a brand new version. It should be reverse compatible, and you'll be able to use some arbitrary additional data to create these identity proofs. I don't think it'll be too hard. We just haven't, it's outside of the scope of the project, so we haven't wanted to veer too far off and do a big release. But maybe that is one of the next things we do. And in the future, really, this whole thing needs to be rewritten. We have within the signing request library, there are, I can't even see where they would be. It has its own transaction types. Like we're not even fully leveraging the Antelope library. Yeah, like this resolved transaction. This is a legacy from when we were using EOS.js. And if you've ever worked with signing requests, it's kind of frustrating when you're in a strongly typed environment because this resolved transaction is not equal to an Antelope transaction. It is like its own thing. It's not a struct. It's just this interface. It's largely identical to the shape of it, but TypeScript does not like comparing resolved transactions to transactions. And you also lose out on a lot of stuff. So yeah, that might be a pitch in the near future to be like, okay, it's time to fully upgrade this.
Do you know if they're like, I missed a bit because my internet's being very choppy. In the contract kit for actions that have different data types?
I believe so.
Like basically it's the same
it.
action, and based on the data that you're passing, in the smart contract, it like, will have different internal calls that it does. Like the data type of the action.
I'm still not sure I'm following fully. I do know the Atomic Assets contract does some crazy things like that, which we've designed around. But being a non-contract developer, like I don't know if that's what you're asking about. I'm trying to see if maybe one of these is a good example. not a huge. I know we have a lot of. We did a lot of work with variants and these special types that contracts can define. So I don't know if that's the answer. I guess I would need to kind of see it in action, or for you to try it and let me know if it doesn't work.
Yeah, like because I'm not even sure if it will be part of the ABI produced. Like this is all from the ABI, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let me do some more tests and like try to run it myself and see what I can get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. I mean, we're actively kind of looking for where maybe the contract kit breaks with some more advanced contract usage.
Yeah, so this contract will, like the one we're working on, will definitely do that proper testing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's related to the game, but I think we have one of the unit tests in here running for that as well.
Oh, nice.
So we definitely made
The
sure.
next version, so to speak.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, it's great to see contracts running this and then being like, well, this doesn't work with my contract. And we're like, oh, we didn't know you could do that with a contract. And then we got to go back and do some modifications. Cool. Well, yeah,
And also, like we're looking at adding our own kind of post processor to the ABI for the indexes. You know, automatically look for like index by or whatever in the HPP files, and then add to the API file to let you know like the different key types and key names that are usually just like an empty array in the API, so that you can figure out what are the secondary and other indices.
That'd be awesome.
But like we're gonna implement something that works for us, so to speak, and if others wanna, make it a standard or what, that'd be great too.
Yeah. I know we talked about that in the past, and having the CDT actually use those fields would be awesome. So that way we can add that kind of stuff in here for auto completion purposes and for just making it easier to interact with. Hopefully this kind of
like we looked a bit into having the CDT do it, and it's not, unless you have Bucky or the person who is still working with ENF, I don't foresee any major potential changes to CDT.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like this, like the way it works with CLang and all that. It's like I'm not very familiar with it at all because it's not what I work on. But my understanding is it's not as straightforward as it seems. That's why we went with like, we'll just do a post processor, like something that scripts that runs after and modifies the API.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that becomes a standard like process that we can apply to other ABIs, like having the contract kit or the command line tool optionally understand those and modify this type of output generated code would be really useful. It's like an extended
because you do
ABI
have the
standard.
key types. Yeah, because you do have key name.
Yeah.
Which is just that they're always empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what way you manage to put them in, whether using a post processor we put or somebody makes their own kind of version, as long as they're available in the API, one should be able to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can interpret it. Whatever happens between contract writing and ABI creation, like as long as it's in the ABI, that's where Wharf can come in and start interpreting it to use code generation. And so long as it's not, like, so long as we make it optional, so when it doesn't exist on vanilla contracts, it shouldn't impact anybody else. Cool. Well, yeah. If you end up with one of those ABIs, let me know.
Because by default, it should be optional anyway, because it will only be in the same array that's already in the ABI. Just instead of empty, you'll have something like, like the field.
Yeah, you cut out, but I think I got what you were saying.
Other array, you have the type, all the different types that.
For sure. Having those additional indices in there. Were you going to say something, Nathan?
I'm very sad to not hear Shaq.
Right. He just kind of faded away. And he's reconnecting. So maybe we'll get a chunk of that back when he returns. Well, we'll just hear Olivia talk for now. No, I do think what I was kind of saying was I hope that in using this contract kit along with the ABIs that we can, I don't know, encourage or drive modernization or improvements or whatever you want to call it to the ABIs and start adding more data to it. So that way the, like this flow of information can continually make front end development better. I just don't know what if that'll come down from the platform level or the CDT level or whatever. Certainly would be nice though. Welcome back.
I don't know for how long.
That's all good. I think we got the gist of it. Like that exists and nobody's using it. So if we can have tools that help us use those fields, that would be super powerful.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the kind of the call to action towards the end of this is that like we're really looking for people to put this through its paces with your own applications, because this is a tool for all of this. All of Wharf is a tool for all of us to build the applications that we want as individuals. So putting it through the paces with all those variations and figuring out which spots we can improve upon, recording those ideas, figuring out what's next, how we can make that happen, what changes might be needed at the platform level or the CDT level, or where we can add value in to make just this great developer experience is going to come over time as we all start using it. So now is kind of that time. We're going to start using it in a couple things more heavily. Stop focusing so much on the like internals of it and start actually like applying it to applications. And I guess I would hope that a lot of other people will too. I know I've talked with a number of people who are using it now. So yeah, we will over time have to see where this evolves to, just based on all of our experiences with it. So hopefully it doesn't, I mean, it won't turn into what the SDKs we've had in the past, where they just are going to sit for years. Like that's just not going to happen.
Gonna hold you to that.
Yeah, right.
This is recorded, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is broadcast live.
Doing it live.
Yep. So it'll be good. Like I said earlier, I'm really excited to start using it myself. So it'll be a nice change of pace to like actually be working on applications again rather than the code that powers applications. Olivia agrees. Cool. Well, I mean, unless we've got something else we want to tack on here, it's a good ending point, and that is very great to hear from Include Null in chat saying it's been so nice to work with Wharf. If you find things that are not nice to work with in Wharf, like we're super interested in that too. It's been kind of surprising that it has, I mean, not surprising, that may be a bad way to put it. But there's been just an overwhelming positive reception, I think, based on what we've all previously worked with and what we have now. But we still do want to be critical of it, to figure out where it can improve. I mean, it's not perfect, but hopefully it's awesome enough. Cool. And we will, I mean, I'll plan on keeping this on the calendar. So we'll have another one of these on the 22nd, and then maybe another one of these on the 29th. And then maybe that's the end of the weekly calls, and take December, no meetings. And as a community, just kind of talk about what's next. We'll continue to have other conversations. Like yesterday, we talked a lot about Wharf in the roundtable. I'm sure that'll continue. Yeah, and we'll continue to make ourselves available. So
I think it might make sense to have a call for after the holidays, when people might have had more time to play with everything, and now that it's more or less in its mature phase, and just like on feedback and
yeah,
anybody who's interested in joining, not so much as like announcing or working on new things, but just how people been using it, and what did they run into and whatnot.
yeah, I think that's a really good idea. So sometime in the new year, like once everybody's like played with it for a while, we can schedule something, do one of these calls, just open forum, or maybe that's the subject of one of the roundtables in the new year. Who knows? Someplace where we can get people together and be like, okay, what have you experienced? What do you like? What don't you like? And let's figure out how to make this even better, or even like worse, like where are you blocked? Is anybody blocked somewhere? Because we definitely don't want people to be stuck in. The only reason you should still be using the old tools is if you have just this like pile of technical debt. You know, like for us with the old Anchor desktop, there's a mountain of technical debt, and Wharf will never exist in the old version of desktop. But in the new version, since we get to start fresh, we'll definitely be using it. Cool. Well, maybe we wrap this one up here then. Good chat. I thank you guys for joining quite regularly. And we will do this again a couple times and then see where it goes next year. Thanks, everyone.